Fiancée's aunt is the worst and ruined my proposal. Sorry for the long post. I'm bored during the holidays and I just need to get this off my chest, and I tell you guys about my 35M, fiancée's 32F aunt, who is in her 70s and is the worst lady I've ever encountered. A little background story. My fiancée's dad and her aunt are immigrants who moved here to the U.S. during the 80s. Being immigrants back then in pursuit of the American dream wasn't easy, so I do give them props for leaving their families in their home country for a better life. Eventually, they were able to move all their siblings over, and they all live within a 5-minute drive from each other in the same town. They worked hard to be successful, but it developed this nasty attitude of pride and entitlement. Then coming from a culture where respect is simply given to a person because they are an elder doesn't help either. Her dad doesn't like me for some reason and hasn't made any effort of reciprocating any efforts of getting to know each other, even when bringing gifts or drinks to share with each other. It's crazy to me because he is known as the nice uncle among the family, but is just cold and distant when it comes to me. The aunt is the matriarch of the family whose power over her family is rooted in her giving money to them. That's all she's about, money. It's also how she gauges your worth by the amount of money you have. Anyway, my fiancé and I just got engaged this year after dating for 10 years. We would have sooner, but certain conditions and life events prolonged it. One of them being my fiancée losing her mom back in 2020. Well, when it came time to ask my soon-to-be fiancée if she would marry me, I was told by her cousins that I would need to ask her dad for permission and her aunt as a stand-in, since her mom has passed. Which I understood and had no problems with keeping up with the traditions since we all come from the same culture. Without my then-girlfriend's knowledge, I visited and asked her dad first, and I was prepared for an argument. I asked if I could speak to him, and just told him what I was planning on doing and that we could sit down and chat. However, to my surprise, he just said that, if you think you're ready, then go ahead. Although I thought he'd have more of a reaction to having his only daughter's significant other ask for her hand in marriage, it went over smoother than I expected. Great, I thought. On to the next task. I visited the aunt at her home a couple of days later. I met her, did the same spiel in her, and I sat down for what I thought was going to be a chat. Instead, it was a 2.5-hour-long session of her berating and belittling me. She called me an outsider to her family who is only trying to leech off of them. According to her, I bring nothing of value to the table, and that my fiancé was stupid for even being with me. She said I was in worthless career. I'm an education specialist BTW, and working on my last year of completing my master's. She demanded I tell her if my fiancé and I have sexual relations, to which I replied that it isn't my position to divulge that information, but that she can be rest assured that I would never pressure my fiancé into anything she is uncomfortable with. To which she replied with, "Humph, 10 years you've been together, and you haven't touched her? That makes you a F-word slur against gays in our language." She even called in one of the other aunties that was at the house at that time visiting and said, "Come in here. This guy is telling me he's been with my niece for 10 years, and he hasn't laid a finger on her. Look at this F-word slur." What a F-word slur? Don't lie to me. I know how men think. She then proceeded to demand I reveal to her and grant her access to my bank account and all my assets so she can see and tell it I am worthy to her, the aunt, and not my fiancé. She then decided to badmouth my fiancé and her late mother. She claimed that the mom kept my fiancé distant from the family and that she must have been mentally disabled, thinking that was good for my fiancé growing up, and that because of her mother's action my fiancé has picked up unsavory habits like associating herself with people like me. At this point I was seething. It's one thing to berate and belittle me, but to talk smack about my fiancé and her mother, who was the only person from my fiancé's immediate family to accept me and get to know me, I couldn't stand it. I held my tongue so as not to cause any unnecessary drama and caused the aunt to call me fiancé to complain about my visit and ruin the surprise. But I guess I didn't do a good enough job hiding my emotions because the aunt called me out saying, "Why do your eyes look like that? They look like they got bad intentions behind them. This is why you aren't good for our family." I'd had enough. I ended the conversation, telling her I had to go. Before I left, I told her, "Even if you're not happy with it, I'm still going to ask your niece, and it's ultimately her decision. Please just let her have the surprise of me asking her." And she just replied with, "I hope she makes the smart decision and says no. Goodbye." Fast forward to the day before the proposal. I get a text message from one of my fiancé's cousins saying that the aunt had thrown me under the bus. She called my fiancé to complain about another family member, which then just evolved into her complaining to her about me and revealing that I had visited her to ask for permission. I was livid. Months of planning, ruined. I even arranged for some of her family from her mom's side to fly in from out of state so they could be there to witness us getting engaged. They had literally just taken off to travel to us. I couldn't postpone the proposal. I decided to go ahead and do it anyway. She knew it was happening, but at least she didn't know when it was happening. I arranged to have a photo shoot done for our 10-year anniversary of dating at a local flower and nature garden, and it all went according to plan. We had loved ones hide out of sight until the big moment, and she said yes. She didn't expect the out-of-state family to be there, so at least that was still a surprise for her. We all went to celebrate after, except for her dad's side of the family. It broke my heart when my fiancé called her dad and asked her to come out to the restaurant with us and celebrate, but he said he couldn't because he had to go buy shampoo from Costco for one of the aunties. We still had a good time. My now fiancé and I went over to visit the aunt the next day to pay our respects. The dad was there, but didn't bother to say anything to us. The aunt took one look at my fiancé's engagement ring and said it loud enough for me to hear. "That's all he can afford? You poor thing, Mija." But my saint of a fiancé just said, "It's perfect to me," and smiled at me. All my anger disappeared. I don't remember much more after that, but we left shortly after. Well, anyways, we're back for the holidays and the dad side of the family is a shit show. I've been a bit under the weather, so I used that as an excuse to avoid going over to the aunt's house for the holidays. Their family is feuding right now with another faction of the family one of the siblings married into. I heard the aunt complained about how the other faction had the audacity to celebrate the holidays like she owned the holidays. Of course, she was also complaining about me and spouting again about how I need to grant her access to my bank accounts and show proof of all my assets because it's the only way I can show I am acceptable. Meanwhile, one of her nephews got into heavy drugs this year and got to the point of holding his dad, the aunt's and fiancé's dad's brother, at gunpoint and getting arrested. They even had to ask the aunt to bail out the nephew. But apparently I'm much more of a Blythe to the family for simply existing and being in love with my fiancé. Happy holidays. I just want to be clear that my fiancé does not have any of the same values of her family and that I wouldn't choose to deal with her family if she wasn't worth all of this. Thanks for reading.